We're going to have a panel discussion now, but before we do, I'm going to invite Kathi Stanzel up, not because she knows what peak shaving is all about, but because she's been following a lot of the events that are going on within the IMO at the moment, and we heard some criticism earlier in the day about the pace of change at the IMO, Kathi, and it's a commonly heard discussion about just how slow everything goes at the IMO. It almost sounds like a song. Do you agree with that? Or has there been a change in momentum and belief that the IMO can actually deliver something?
Thank you for that lead in, Craig. I don't believe it, and I'll lead you there, because I think, first of all, can I say welcome, gentlemen? Because everyone this morning said ladies, and I said ladies and gentlemen, because actually this is about inclusiveness and not exclusiveness. So I'm really happy we have a mixed audience. Thank you, Craig. We're talking about the Arctic, and I'll come back to your question, I promise. In just about a minute, I'll come around back to it. Arctic, climate change, they're inextricably linked, and that's absolutely fine. We know that transport globally contributes around about 14% to global emissions. That's all transport, not just shipping. Shipping, according to the last IMO greenhouse gas study, which is done a few years ago, and as Martin rightly said, is just a model, is about 2.6% of those 14%. Great. So far, so good. Now, we provide, as a transport service, 70% of all goods moved. Some people say 90%. It doesn't really matter. It's all statistics anyway. But ultimately, we're important as an industry in terms of what moves around the world. Now, we're also the first industry globally that has made a commitment. We have used the UN body that looks after shipping, the IMO, to make a commitment to decarbonize our industry. The 2050 goals are real goals. There are real stretch goals for us as an industry, because at the moment we don't really know how we're going to get there, but we're going to get there with little bits. There's no one silver bullet. We need to pull all the things together. Now, if I look at what we're doing today in terms of ship owners, people have done this for years. Waste heat recovery. It's obvious. All the operational measures that we're taking to be more energy efficient, it's all obvious. We're looking at propulsion systems and fuels that we're using. Obvious. Let's look at electrification. Maybe electrification will effectively be the answer for a lot of, certainly the short-range vessels, absolutely no question. But today, as batteries stand, a battery has about 2% of the energy density of jet fuel, which is probably one of the most high-density fuels that you can get. That's today, 2%. That'll, of course, increase really, really quickly. And if you look at electric vehicles, in 2016, at the beginning of 2016, you had less than 1 million on the roads globally. Today, we've got more than 4 million, and the projections for 2030 are over 100 million vehicles. And that's not just passenger vehicles, that's buses and everything else. People are talking about electric planes, certainly short-distance vessels, and maybe, depending on what happens, hybrid propulsion systems also for ocean going. Absolutely fine. Now, when it comes to our industry, what are we busy with at IMO right now? It's not just climate change, because everyone says, oh, climate change, IMO solution. It isn't, because we're just looking at CO2. CO2 is just one climate change agent. What about methane? Who here still eats beef? Methane? Yeah, ring a bell? So we are all responsible to make climate change less of a problem for humanity and the globe, frankly. And I think we had this comment earlier that IMO was very slow, and IMO, I heard this, IMO will reduce emissions. It won't. Sorry to break it to anyone who thinks that. IMO isn't. We are. And ultimately, we are IMO. IMO is a body of the United Nations. International democracy takes time. So in answer to your question, I don't think it is slow. It's much slower than some of us would want, and it's much slower than maybe the planet needs, but it's much faster than the rest of the UN, for sure. And it is, I agree with you, it has changed pace. And I think now the responsibility is on us to give the people that we elect into our governments the political will to make the change quicker, to speed it up. And WISTA is now also an observer delegation at IMO, so I encourage everybody who's a member of WISTA also to make sure that we put enough pressure and give the political will. Without us as an industry, we would not have had the 2050 goals agreed. I can categorically say that. I was in the room. So therefore, let's keep pushing. I'm going to just, before I bring the other panelists on, I'm just going to take you one step further with your comment here about the reasons why we've seen a speed up in pace of change at the IMO. Do you think that the diversity question is already happening at the IMO and we're starting to see that impact the decision making and the willingness to actually engage in this? That's a good question. It'd be very arrogant to say yes. I think diversity in the broadest sense, yes, you are right. Because what we're seeing is at IMO, especially in the Marine Environmental Protection Committee, for example, we are no longer looking at a bunch of elderly engineers that end up in the administration. We're now looking at administrators that have been, some of them to WMU in Malmö, that have looked at the bigger picture. We're seeing people that come from industry into some of the national delegations. So the mix is much broader. And also, they're willing to challenge more. They're no longer willing to just go with, oh, the UK delegation or the US delegation says this, so therefore we all follow. We're certainly seeing that. So I think, yeah, you're probably right.
So there's the willingness to actually raise more questions,
yes,
and engage in their own sort of agendas, if you like, without being sort of swept along in a sort of general consensus
I agree.
feeling.
Yeah.